Do you confirm that your brother was abducted by aliens? How and when did it happen?
My brother's bedroom is exactly the same as it was 27 years ago. Mom kept it that way. Baseball trophies still on the shelf, Star Wars posters still on the walls. His bed's still made with those stupid spaceship sheets he loved. When I came back to the farm last week to clean things out after Mom passed, I couldn't even step inside that room, just stood in the doorway like I was waiting for permission. Last night, that changed. Last night, the lights came back. They've tried to silence me before, but with your support, by liking, subscribing, and commenting where you're watching from, the truth will keep echoing. Growing up in rural Iowa, you learn to appreciate stillness. That farmhouse was my whole world until I was 10. Me and Tommy, we'd spend hours exploring the cornfields, building forts in the barn, lying in the grass counting stars. That night in 1998 was just like any other summer night. Dad was in town getting parts for the tractor. Mom was inside watching her shows. Me and Tommy were catching fireflies in jars out by the edge of the cornfield. Tommy saw it first. "Paul, look." His voice was different. Quiet. When I turned around, I saw his face all lit up from below, like he was holding a flashlight under his chin. But it wasn't a flashlight. The light was coming from somewhere else. The jar in his hand was glowing. Not from the fireflies inside. They were all dead, floating limp in the bottom. The glass itself was pulsing with this soft bluish light. Tommy wasn't scared. He looked curious. That's what gets me now, thinking back. He wasn't afraid at all. "It's warm," he said. And then he looked past me, over my shoulder, and his eyes got wide. I didn't want to turn around. I felt it before I saw it. This pressure change, like when a storm's coming, but worse. My ears popped. The hairs on my arms stood up. It felt like the air itself was humming. When I finally turned, the cornfield was glowing. Not all of it, just a section maybe 50 yards away. The cornstalks were bending, moving in a circle pattern like there was a wind, but the air around us was completely still. "Tommy, we should go inside," I said, but when I reached for him, he wasn't there anymore. My hand grabbed empty air. I spun around, and he was walking toward the light in the field. Not running, not excited, just walking steady, like someone called his name. "Tommy!" I shouted, but my voice sounded wrong, muffled, like shouting underwater. He didn't turn around. I tried to follow him. I swear I tried. But my feet felt so heavy, like they were sunk in mud. Each step was a struggle. The harder I tried to move, the heavier I felt. My head started pounding. My vision blurred around the edges. Tommy reached the edge of the cornfield and just walked in. The light got brighter for a second, so bright I had to close my eyes. When I opened them again, the light was gone. The cornfield was dark and still, and Tommy was gone. What happened next is hard to explain. I don't remember running back to the house. I don't remember screaming for my mom. The next clear memory I have is sitting at the kitchen table with a policeman asking me questions, and my mom crying on the phone to my dad. "He wandered off," the police decided. "Got lost in the cornfield." They brought dogs, search parties. People from 3 counties came out looking. They found nothing. No footprints, no broken cornstalks where he would have walked. Nothing. 2 weeks later, they found his baseball cap by the creek, 5 miles away. That's when the whispers started. That maybe my dad had something to do with it. That maybe I wasn't telling the whole truth. Nobody believed me about the lights, not the police, not my parents. Eventually, I stopped believing it myself. Had to keep going. I convinced myself it was just my brain trying to make sense of something too awful to process. A kidnapping, an accident, anything but what I actually saw. After a few years, my parents split up. Mom stayed in the house, keeping Tommy's room perfect, waiting. Dad moved to Arizona and hardly ever called. I left as soon as I graduated high school, took construction jobs in different cities, built a life away from here. Away from the whispers, the sideways glances, the farm where everything went wrong. For 27 years, I've lived with this weight. The knowledge that I couldn't reach him, couldn't save him, the doubt about what I really saw that night, the guilt of being the one who survived. I came back only because I had to, after Mom's heart attack. The lawyer said I've got to clean out the house, get it ready to sell. First night back, I slept on the couch. Couldn't face the upstairs bedrooms. Not mine, and definitely not Tommy's. Yesterday, I finally started sorting through Mom's things. Found boxes of newspaper clippings about missing children, case files she'd requested copies of, letters to psychics, private investigators. She never gave up. In her bedside drawer, I found a journal. Pages and pages of sightings she'd recorded over the years. Lights in the sky, strange sounds, animals acting weird. She'd been documenting it all, building her own case when everyone else had moved on. And there, tucked in the back pages of her journal, a photo I'd never seen before. It was our backyard, taken the day after Tommy disappeared. In the background, barely visible in the cornfield, 3 circles pressed down into the crops. Perfect circles, overlapping. The police reports never mentioned them. That's when the power went out. Just for a second, a quick flicker. The digital clock on the microwave reset itself. My phone died, even though it had been at 80% charge. And I felt it again. That pressure change. The humming in the air. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out toward the cornfield. The same cornfield, never replanted after my dad left and Mom let the farm operations go. There was a light moving over it. Not like a flashlight or a car. Something else. Something I hadn't seen in 27 years. It moved in the same circular pattern, pulsing softly. My ears popped. The glass of water on the counter vibrated. And somehow I knew. They were back. The same ones who took Tommy. And deep down, in a place I don't like to acknowledge, I felt something unexpected. Not just fear, relief, because maybe after all these years I wasn't crazy. Maybe what I saw was real. And if it was real, if they were real, then maybe Tommy was still out there somewhere. Maybe he didn't die alone in a cornfield like everyone thought. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching that light move. Part of me wanted to run outside toward it. Part wanted to lock myself in the bathroom until morning. But I couldn't move either way. I just stood there, a 45-year-old man, feeling like that helpless 10-year-old boy all over again. Then the light vanished. Just blinked out. The pressure in the room returned to normal. My phone turned back on by itself, buzzing with missed call notifications. I didn't sleep at all last night. Just sat by the window, watching the cornfield, waiting, wondering if I'd imagined it all again. But this morning, I walked out to where I'd seen the light. The old cornfield is mostly tall grass now, but there, in a perfect circle, the grass is flattened, pressed down in a swirling pattern, the same pattern from Mom's photograph, the same place where Tommy disappeared. I'm not leaving this farm until I find out what happened to my brother. I've spent my whole adult life running from this place, from these memories. I'm not running anymore. I haven't told anyone about what I saw in the field. Who would I tell? The sheriff here is the same deputy who looked at me with suspicion when I was 10. The neighbors think I'm just a troubled kid who came back to sell his dead mother's house. And honestly, I'm still not sure I trust what I saw myself. But I know what I felt. That same pressure change. That same humming sensation. This morning, I went through more of Mom's things. Found a box under her bed full of VHS tapes. They're all labeled with dates. The earliest is from a week after Tommy disappeared. The latest is from just 2 months ago. I found an old VCR in the basement and hooked it up. The first tape was Mom, sitting at the kitchen table talking to the camera. Her hair still dark, her face young but hollow with grief. She spoke directly to the lens, her voice steady despite everything. The police have stopped looking for Tommy. But I won't. Paul saw something that night, something he can't explain. And I believe him. My throat tightened hearing that. All these years, I thought she'd dismissed my story like everyone else. The tapes are her video journals. For 27 years, she'd been documenting strange occurrences around the farm. Power outages, equipment malfunctions, animals going missing. Things I never knew about because I was gone, building my life somewhere else, trying to forget. In one tape from 2010, she's walking through the same cornfield where Tommy disappeared, pointing out an area where the corn had been flattened in a spiral pattern. Just like what I saw this morning. This is the 3rd time this year, she says on the tape. Always in the same spot. Always in the same pattern. I spent hours watching these tapes, fast-forwarding through some, rewinding others. In all of them, Mom is calm, methodical, not the desperate, grieving mother I remembered, but a determined investigator. And there's something else. In the later tapes, she keeps mentioning headaches, nosebleeds, lost time. It happened again yesterday, she says in a tape from last year. I was in the garden at 2 p.m., and suddenly it was dark. 4 hours, gone. And when I came to, I had these. She holds up her arm to the camera. 3 small marks, perfectly spaced, like someone had pressed a hot pencil eraser against her skin. I rolled up my sleeve and looked at my own arm. Nothing. But then I remembered the weird bruise I found on my shoulder this morning. 3 small marks, perfectly spaced. My hands started shaking so bad I had to turn off the TV. I decided to check the field again. The flattened grass pattern was still there, but now I noticed something I'd missed before. In the center of the spiral was a small metal object, about the size of a quarter. Not rusty or weathered like it had been there for years. Shiny like it was brand new. I picked it up. It was surprisingly warm, vibrating slightly against my palm. Not like a phone vibration. Subtler, like it was resonating at a frequency just below what I could hear. No markings, no seams, just a smooth, silver disc. As I held it, my headache started. Small at first, just behind my eyes, then spreading, intensifying. I dropped the disc back into the grass, but the headache didn't stop. I stumbled back toward the house, my vision blurring around the edges. I made it to the kitchen sink just before I threw up. Gripping the countertop, I caught my reflection in the window. Blood was trickling from my nose, just like Mom on the tapes. I don't remember going to bed, don't remember falling asleep, but I must have, because suddenly I was dreaming, except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a memory. I was back in that night in 1998, but this time I wasn't watching Tommy walk into the cornfield. I was Tommy. I could feel what he felt. That pull, like gravity, but stronger. That certainty that I needed to walk toward the light. And I wasn't afraid. That's what bothers me the most. In the dream, as Tommy, I felt calm, curious, like I was about to discover something I'd been waiting for all my life. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the bedsheets twisted around me. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, didn't recognize the room. Then it clicked. I was in Tommy's bedroom. Somehow, I'd gone upstairs in the night and fallen asleep in his bed, the bed that had been empty for 27 years. My phone said it was 3:17 a.m. The house was silent except for the usual creaks and groans of an old farmhouse. But something felt off. The air was too still, too heavy. I got up and went to the window. Tommy's window faces the cornfield. From here, you can see the whole western edge of the property, stretching out to where it meets the Johnsons' farm. There was a light in the distance, not like the one I'd seen before. This was smaller, steadier, like a lantern. It was moving slowly along the edge of the property, where the old fence line used to be. Someone walking the perimeter of the farm at 3 a.m. I watched until the light disappeared behind the barn. Then I put on my boots, grabbed the flashlight from beside the bed, and went downstairs. I don't know what I was thinking. That it might be Tommy, somehow returned. That it might be whoever, whatever, took him. The night air was cool on my face as I stepped onto the porch. Crickets were singing. A normal sound. A reassuring sound. I switched on the flashlight and swept the beam across the yard. Nothing moved. I started walking toward the barn, gravel crunching under my boots. The barn door was open a few inches. I know I'd closed it yesterday after looking for some of Dad's old tools. My hand shook as I pulled the door wider. The hinges creaked. That same sound from my childhood, oddly comforting in its familiarity. "Hello?" My voice sounded small in the darkness. The flashlight beam caught dust motes floating in the air, farm equipment covered in tarps. Dad's old workbench, still cluttered with tools. Something moved in the back corner behind the tractor. Not a person, too small, too quick, a raccoon maybe, or a barn cat. I stepped forward, moving the flashlight beam slowly across the floor. That's when I saw it. A footprint in the dust. Small, like a child's, leading toward the back of the barn, toward the old storm cellar door. A door I hadn't opened in 27 years. A door Mom had padlocked after Tommy disappeared. "Too dangerous," she'd said. "Rotten steps. You could fall." The padlock was on the floor now. Open. The cellar door was ajar. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring at that open cellar door. My body was telling me to turn around, to go back to the house, to lock the doors and wait until morning. But I couldn't. Those footprints, they were the same size Tommy's would have been. I pulled the cellar door all the way open. The hinges protested, squealing into the night. The flashlight beam showed concrete steps descending into darkness. I could smell the damp earth, the mildew. The air coming up from below was cold. "Hello?" I called down again. My voice echoed slightly. No answer. Looking back, I should have called someone. The sheriff, maybe. A neighbor. Anyone. But who would believe me? And what would I say? I think my brother, who disappeared 27 years ago, is in my storm cellar. They'd think I'd lost it completely. So I went down alone. One step at a time, testing each one before putting my full weight on it. Mom had been right about them being rotten. The third step down cracked under my boot. I had to press myself against the wall to keep from falling. The cellar was just as I remembered it. Shelves of home-canned vegetables that no one would ever eat now. Dad's old workbench against the back wall. Cardboard boxes of Christmas decorations. Normal farm cellar stuff. Except for the wall behind the workbench. It was wrong, somehow. In my memory, that wall had been solid concrete, like the other three, but now there was a section that looked different, newer, like it had been patched. I moved closer, shifting the workbench out of the way. The patch was about 4 feet wide, 3 feet high. The concrete was a slightly different shade than the rest of the wall, and there were marks around the edges like someone had chiseled it out and then filled it back in. I tapped on it with my knuckles. It sounded hollow. That's when the flashlight started to flicker. Just a slight flutter at first, then more insistent. I smacked it against my palm a few times, but it kept getting dimmer. New batteries, dying in minutes. In the fading light, I could see something else on the patched section of wall. Letters scratched faintly into the concrete, not carved deep, more like someone had used a nail or a sharp stone to scratch the surface. Tommy, my brother's name, scratched into a patch of concrete that shouldn't be there, in a cellar no one had used in decades. The flashlight died completely, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, turned on its flashlight. The battery was at 17%. It had been fully charged when I came downstairs. I ran my fingers over the scratched letters. They felt warm to the touch, warmer than the concrete around them. Without thinking, I pressed harder, and the patch moved. Just slightly, but enough that I could feel it give under my hand. I pushed again, using my shoulder for leverage. There was a grinding sound, and the patch section of wall swung inward like a door. Behind it was a tunnel. I'm not talking about a mine shaft or something man-made. This was rough, organic, like something had burrowed through the earth. The walls were smooth, almost polished. The tunnel was tall enough for me to stand in, maybe 7 feet high and about 5 feet wide. My phone light only reached about 10 feet into it before darkness swallowed the beam. But I could feel air moving, a steady breeze coming from somewhere deep inside. I should have been terrified, should have run back upstairs, nailed that cellar door shut, and called the National Guard or something. But all I could think was, this is where Tommy went. This is how they took him. I stepped into the tunnel. The ground sloped downward, gradually but noticeably. The air got colder the further I went. My phone battery drained faster, 14%, 11%, 8% in the space of minutes. The tunnel curved to the left, then right, then left again. No side passages, just one path, winding its way under the farm, under the fields where we used to play, under the spot where Tommy disappeared. I don't know how long I walked, lost all sense of time down there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. My phone died just as the tunnel opened into a larger space. I was left in complete darkness. Not the kind of dark where your eyes eventually adjust. This was absolute. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but I could hear something, a faint rhythmic sound, like breathing, but not quite human. And then, there was light. Not from my phone, not from any source I could see. The walls themselves began to glow, giving off a soft, bluish light, exactly like the jar Tommy had been holding that night. The chamber was circular, maybe 30 feet across. The walls curved up to form a domed ceiling. No furniture, no equipment, just smooth, glowing walls and a floor that looked almost like glass. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, rising about 3 feet from the floor. And on top of the pedestal was a cube, maybe 6 inches on each side, made of the same glowing material as the walls. I approached it slowly. As I got closer, the cube began to pulse, the light brightening and dimming in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate, like Morse code, but more complex. I reached out to touch it. I don't know why. Some compulsion I couldn't fight. The moment my fingers contacted the surface, images flooded my mind. Not like a movie, more like memories being poured directly into my brain. Disjointed fragments, overwhelming. I saw Tommy walking into the cornfield, saw the light envelop him, saw him descend into a tunnel, just like the one I'd walked through. I saw him in this chamber, standing where I was standing, touching the cube just as I was touching it. I saw other children too, dozens of them, from different times, different places, all led to the same chamber, all touching the cube. None of them seemed afraid. They looked peaceful, curious, like Tommy had looked that night. And then I saw something else, something I still can't fully process. I saw myself as a child standing in this chamber. But that's impossible. I never went missing. I never walked into the light. I was the one left behind, wasn't I? The images stopped abruptly as my hand jerked away from the cube. I fell backward, landing hard on the glass-like floor. My head was pounding, blood running from my nose again. My vision swam, darkness creeping in at the edges. The last thing I remember is the walls pulsing brighter, the light becoming blinding, and a voice, not heard with my ears, but felt in my mind. You came back. I woke up in Tommy's bed. Sunlight streaming through the window. Birds singing outside. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing. The tunnel, the chamber, the cube. All of it. Just a nightmare brought on by grief and exhaustion. Then I saw the dirt under my fingernails, the tears in my jeans, the bruise forming on my palm where I'd touched the cube. And I knew it was real. I'd been sitting here for hours trying to figure out how to explain what happened next, how to make sense of it myself. The rational part of my brain keeps trying to find explanations. Stress, grief. Maybe I hit my head in the cellar and hallucinated everything after. But I know what I saw, what I felt, what I remembered. After finding myself back in Tommy's bed, I spent the day in a daze. Kept checking my phone, which was somehow fully charged again. Called the real estate agent and told her I needed more time before listing the house. She wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I couldn't go back to the cellar. Not right away. Instead, I went through more of Mom's tapes, watched her document year after year of strange occurrences, the same patterns repeating, the same unexplained phenomena. On a tape from 2015, she mentioned a local man named Frank Guthrie who claimed to have seen lights in the sky above our farm. Said he'd stop by to tell her about it, thinking she'd want to know. Frank still lives in town, runs the hardware store on Main Street. I drove there that afternoon, found him stocking shelves in the back. "Paul Miller," he said when I introduced myself. "Your mom was a good woman, stubborn as hell, but good." I asked him about what he'd seen that night in 2015. His face changed, grew serious. "She told you about that, huh?" He glanced around, made sure no one was listening. "Look, I don't talk about this stuff much. People think you're crazy." We went to the diner across the street. Over coffee, Frank told me he'd been driving home late, passing by our farm, when the sky lit up like someone had turned on a football stadium light. His truck died right there on the road. Radio went to static. He sat there for maybe 5 minutes while the lights moved in patterns over our cornfield. "Same place where your brother went missing," he said. "Everyone in town knows that story." Then he told me something that made my blood run cold. "Your mom ever tell you about the others?" "What others?" I asked. "Other kids that went missing around here, not just your brother." According to Frank, there had been 5 disappearances within a 20-mile radius of our farm between 1950 and 1998. All children between 7 and 10 years old, all last seen near their homes, all unsolved. Tommy was the last one. "After your brother, people started watching their kids closer," Frank said. "Nobody lets them play alone near the fields anymore." I asked him if he believed in aliens. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I believe there are things we don't understand," he said. "Things science can't explain yet. Whether you call them aliens or something else doesn't much matter." Before I left, he told me one more thing. His grandfather had worked our land back in the 1930s before my family bought it. Said there had always been stories about that property, about people seeing things in the fields at night, about the animals that wouldn't graze in certain spots. "That cellar under your barn," he said as I was getting up to leave. "It wasn't originally a storm cellar. Your dad converted it in the 70s. Before that, it was sealed up. Concrete poured over the entrance." "Why?" I asked. "Story goes the previous owner found something down there he didn't like, something that scared him bad enough to bury it." I drove back to the farm with Frank's words echoing in my head. 5 children over 5 decades, all disappeared without a trace, all connected to our land somehow. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway. The house looked different to me now, older, stranger, like it was keeping secrets. I went inside and straight to Tommy's room, sat on his bed and looked out the window at the darkening cornfield, watched as the first stars appeared in the sky. That's when I noticed it, a photo on Tommy's nightstand that I hadn't paid attention to before. Me and him, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. But there was something off about it. The Tommy in the photo had a small scar above his left eyebrow, a scar I didn't remember him having. I picked up the frame, examined it closer, flipped it over and removed the backing. Written on the back of the photo, in my mother's handwriting, "Paul and Tommy, 1 week after." 1 week after what? I felt that pressure change again, the air getting heavier, my ears popping. Outside the window, a light appeared over the cornfield, the same circular pattern, the same pulsing glow. I didn't fight it this time, didn't try to run or hide. I walked downstairs, out the back door, across the yard. The light grew brighter as I approached the field. I could feel that pull again, like gravity but stronger, drawing me forward. The cornstalks parted in front of me, creating a path. The air hummed with energy. My skin tingled. Each step felt both terrifying and inevitable. In the center of the field, where the light was brightest, I found a circle of flattened corn, and in the middle of that circle stood a boy. He looked about 8 years old, wearing jeans and a red t-shirt, the same clothes Tommy had been wearing the night he disappeared. But his face, it wasn't Tommy. It was me. The boy who looked like 8-year-old me smiled. Not a frightened smile, not a threatening one, just recognition. "You remember now," he said. My voice, but not my voice. And suddenly, I did remember. Not everything, but enough. Fragments slotting into place like puzzle pieces. I remembered being taken that night in 1998, being led through a tunnel into a chamber with glowing walls, touching a cube that filled my mind with images, with knowledge. I remembered being changed somehow, duplicated. One Paul stayed behind, grew up believing his brother had been taken. The other went with them, wherever, whatever they were. "Tommy's waiting," the boy said. "He's been waiting a long time." "Where?" My voice cracked. "Where is he?" The boy pointed up, but I understood he didn't mean literally the sky. He meant elsewhere, another place, maybe another time. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come back now?" "You're ready now," he said. "Both parts of you are ready to be whole again." The light around us intensified. I felt myself starting to come apart, molecule by molecule, not painfully, more like waking from a dream, shedding an identity that had never quite fit. I'm not sure how to explain what happened next. I'm not sure the words exist. All I know is that for a moment, I understood everything. Why they had been visiting our farm for generations. Why they had taken those children. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't an abduction in the way we think of it. It was a gathering, a collecting of specific people at specific times. People who could help them understand us. People who could help us eventually understand them. As the light enveloped me completely, one last memory surfaced. Tommy smiling at me across that glowing chamber 27 years ago. Not afraid, not traumatized. "It's okay, Paul," he had said. "We get to be explorers." The next thing I knew, I was standing in my mother's kitchen. The digital clock on the microwave said 3:17 a.m., the same time I had woken up in Tommy's room the night before, or what I thought was the night before. I checked my phone. The date showed I had lost 3 days. On the kitchen table was a small silver disc, the same one I had found in the field, but now there were markings on it, symbols I somehow recognized, though I'd never seen them before, and beside it a Polaroid photograph. Me and Tommy, arms around each other, both adults now, both smiling, both with identical scars above our left eyebrows. On the back, written in handwriting that looked like mine but wasn't quite, "We'll come home soon. I'm still here at the farm, still trying to process everything that's happened. I've sealed up the cellar again, not out of fear, but to protect what's down there. The tunnel, the chamber, the cube. It's not meant for everyone. Not yet. I've decided not to sell the house. This place has been in my family for generations, though I'm starting to understand that my family is more complicated than I ever knew. I don't expect anyone to believe this story. I'm not sure I would if someone else told it to me. But I know what I experienced, what I remembered, what I learned. They're coming back. Tommy's coming back. And when they do, I'll be ready. If you've experienced something similar, you're not alone. I spent 27 years thinking I was crazy, that my grief had created false memories. But the truth was there all along, buried under our farm, buried in my mind. If you've seen the lights, if you've felt that pull, contact me. We need to be ready when they return. This is my story, my truth. If it resonated with you, please hit subscribe and join me on this journey. I'll be posting updates as they happen. And trust me, there's more to come. And if you know someone who's experienced something they can't explain, share this video with them. Because the most important thing I've learned is that we're not alone. Not even close.